Greetings, folks. This is Book of Mormon Chiasmus. Today I'll be looking at 2nd Nephi chapter 9, mainly in verses 7 through 11, but also kind of a little bit of an extended look. And I will say this entire chapter is extremely structured. You can find the whole chapter on my website, bookofmormonchiasmus.com, but today I just want to talk about mainly the center portion of this chiasmus. On the screen, I have put the larger formation, and I wanted to point out that at the beginning of this chapter and at the end of the chapter, there's a matching set of statements that I think set the tone for what the whole chapter is about, and that also focuses on what is said in the middle of the section, in the middle of the chiasmus. So I want to point that out, and I included it here. So if you notice in verse 1, it says, "There shall be many at the day when I proceed to do a marvelous work among them." So God is stating that he is going to do a work among people. And notice in the middle of section 9, I have also put the same color for work because he's saying, "My work is not yet finished." So I think that sets up one of the themes of this whole section. And I just want to point out that right in the middle structure, he's talking about his work. And then at the top again, it says, "A marvelous work among them, that I may remember my covenants, which I have made unto the children of men." So I highlighted that I may remember, and that there's multiple times within this chapter that he talks about the words remembering. But I think it's one of the key ideas in this section. And you notice in verse 8 in the middle, it says, "I remember one nation unto the other." So the Lord is saying, "I remember the nations and I do a work, and my work is not yet finished." And then at the very bottom of this image, at the end of the chapter, notice it kind of backs out of this. It says that I covenanted with Abraham that I would remember his seed forever. So I've got in blue the fact that covenants is spoken at both the beginning of this chapter and at the end of the chapter. And so I think that's significant. Abraham is a match up unto the children of men because Abraham has seed bigger than the sands of the sea. And then the idea that he remembers the seed forever is at both the top of the chapter and the bottom of the chapter. So I really think that's significant. And so I wanted to put it here in this chiasmus and point out that one of the major themes is that the Lord remembers his people, particularly the the house of Abraham, and he has a work that he is going to do among them. So, moving into the center chiasmus, I just want to point out that this is a chiasmus that I found as I studied the book. And I always start out with Donald Perry's publication called Poetic Parallelisms in the Book of Mormon, where he really kind of compiles the work of a lot of different people together. But there was a section that didn't have any structure to it, and I started looking at it, and I found a structure to it. And what clued me to the structure was the words, "the isles of the sea." And you can see that in both the F and the F prime terms of this section. And I've just learned that when something is repeated, you start looking around for a structure, and I discovered one. Um, so the thing that clued me in was the Isles of the Sea, and then you'll notice that the G term, you get two directions, and they call this a complementary type of a structure because they don't say the same thing, but they kind of have a similar theme and they complement each other. So it says, "God rules in the heavens above and in the earth beneath." And down in the G prime, he says, "I command all men, both in the east and the west and the north and the south." So these are complementary because they're both directions. So I think that helped to form this chiasmus. Then if we look at the H terms, I noticed that it says, "I will bring forth my word unto the children of men." And if you look down in the H prime term, he says, "Because you have a Bible, you need not suppose that it contains all of my words." So that's the exact same statement above and down below. It says, "Neither need you suppose that I have not caused more to be written." And now notice I highlighted in verse 10 that "you need not suppose," and then it's repeated again, "you need not suppose." And that happens quite a bit within structures, is they state the same statement twice, and it kind of it's adding to the what is he just like adding more detail to the structure above. And I think that's called synthetic, where the second one is stating a similar thing but adding more to it. So if you look at it up above, he says, I bring forth my word unto the children of men. Down below, you need not suppose this Bible contains all of my words, neither ye suppose that I have not caused more to be written. So that's a match in the H terms. And then if you look at the I terms, there are two, I and I prime, and I believe these two structures form the center part of the chiasma structure. And there's quite a bit within the two of these, but the reason why I think this is the center is you see in pink, I have highlighted the idea of all nations and then many. And then also in the yellow, it says, this is a witness unto you that I am God. And that after many, in verse 9, it says that I am the same yesterday, today, and forever. And that he remembers the nations and his work is not yet finished. So I believe these are two statements in the middle of the chiasmus, I and I prime, that form the center of the chiasmus structures. But then there's a bunch of detail within each of these statements. I want to go over what I discovered within those. And so notice I have put just after I, there's an A and a B and a C. And that's a form called extended alternate parallelisms, where they do three different statements. And if you notice an I prime, I also have an A and a B and a C. And so I have learned that sometimes within chiasmus structures, they do um, these statements of repetitions in concepts or ideas or similar things. So if you notice in A, um, above in the pink it says all nations, and in A in verse 9 it says to many. I will prove unto many. So that's kind of the same concept behind it. And then the B term is all about words. In 8 it says, wherefore murmur ye because that ye shall receive more of my word. And down below it says in B, and that I speak forth my words according to my own pleasure, and because I have spoken one word, you need not suppose that I can speak another. So that's the same kind of term. That's why I labeled it as B. And then C, there's two um, structures in the same position. And let's see, what was the thing that I just noticed that there's a structure here. And so in the C term, there is a Y, a Z prime, and a Y. And down below, there is what's called a staircase parallelism. And so even though the two structures are not the same, there is definitely a structure there. And that's why I figure it works for the C term that is in both above and below. And so if you look at in the verse 8, the C term, you have the Y, the Z prime, and the Y. That's definitely a chiasmus. So it says, know ye not that the testimony of two nations is a witness unto God. So if you look at the Y prime term, it says, and when the two nations shall run together, the testimony of the two nations shall run together also. So that is a simple synonymous term where it's the same statement that happens again on the outside of the chiasmus. And then the inside, I remember one nation like unto another, wherefore I speak the same words unto one nation like unto another. So those are the exact same frames, but repeated in reverse order. So that's a very strong chiasmus. And the central idea behind that is says, I am God, and I remember nations like unto another. Then down below in verse 9, the C term, he's saying, my work is not yet finished, neither shall it be until the end of man, neither is it from that time henceforth forever. And that's a staircase parallelism where each term adds to the one above it and kind of builds on it. So up above, notice in the C term, it says, I am remembering, and that ties to the very beginning of the whole chapter and also the very end. He says, I will remember, and that is in the C term in the middle of the chiasmus. And then in the C, in the I prime statement in C, he's talking about my work, which also connects to the very beginning of this whole chapter. And so he's highlighting the main concepts within the I and the I prime in the C statements, which is really kind of a pretty ingenious way of embedding your concept within an old Hebrew parallelism structure. So that kind of outlines the center part of this whole chapter. I think it's a really beautiful Hebrew parallel form, and it is one that I discovered and I worked through here. Um, and the main idea is a testimony to our Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ, who have a work that they do. They're continuing to do it. The idea that Revelation was closed at the end of the Bible is stating no, it's not closed. God has a work. He does work with His people. He remembers people. He remembers nations. He remembers people. He remembers individuals, and He does a work for them. And that He remembers the children of men, both Abraham's seed and all the children of men. And He is trying to bring forth the salvation of His people because He is a loving, caring God, both Jesus Christ and the Father. They are one in nature, and thus that's their work. So I really like how this section um, reinforces the mission of God in that He brings forth the salvation of His people. And to do that, He brings forth His words among all the people. And it may be different words to different people and different nations, but that all of those messages will flow together to testify of Jesus Christ and the Father. So, if you want to see the rest of this chapter, there's more structure about it, particularly at the beginning and the ending of the chapter, and I may go over that again in the future. But this is a very pretty parallel structure, strong center focus from the F down to the I terms, and I just wanted to present it and put it out there so that other folks can look at it, critique it. Let me know what you think about this one. If you have any comments on these videos, I'd love to hear what you think. Hebrew parallelism and chiasmus is kind of an offshoot sort of thing that I think adds to the testimony of the Book of Mormon, because I can't foresee a 23-year-old kid who's dictating this out to a scribe, this being Joseph Smith, being able to embed all of this ancient Hebrew poetic literary form into a document. And there's thousands of chiasmus and other poetic Hebrew forms in the Book of Mormon. I'm going to do my best over the years to make publish more of the work that I've done, and also some of the work of the others, and we help reinforce the testimony as people learn about the Book of Mormon. So let me know what you think. Like, subscribe. Thanks for being here, and I'll continue to put forth more of these cool things.